elections are a harbinger for 2024 and how the presidential election is going to go?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not generally a fan of the notion that that one election is necessarily a harbinger of the next, especially the context of Virginia to the national election. I certainly think there are some things that can be learned, but just similarly, and I think a point I want to stress here, and something I didn't mention earlier, and something I'm sure you're all aware of because you've been following this, the arc since Dobbs. We've seen this Democratic overperformance that's been fairly consistent, again, in these battlegrounds, but also in some ways outside the battlegrounds. I'm sure you're aware that when you look at special elections, even just since last year, the Democratic candidate has overperformed past performance, whether you're looking at the Biden performance in that district or previous candidate running, by an average of somewhere between 7 and 8 points. Now, does that mean that's necessarily a harbinger for every future election? No. Does that apply exactly to Virginia? No, it doesn't. But I think it's an important contextual element that has some relevance to what we're looking at in the early vote for Virginia. So I think similarly, in terms of these results, I think the most important element is just to the extent that many people will try to draw conclusions from this based on, a handful of races. I think people are eager to try to define exactly what power Dobbs and the general theme of Republican extremism that I think has been so powerful and is really the reason why Republicans have been underperforming since Dobbs. I think people are eager to try to take any one given year or election and then either declare that the issue has lost its salience, or as if it's a magic wand that gets things done by itself. And the reality is, as we know, it's neither. When we effectively communicate the stakes on the issues, when voters understand those stakes, obviously the stakes in this election and these elections couldn't be any higher in terms of the future of that. So I do think, from a harbinger perspective, I do think these races have the potential to set a sort of national theme that may or may not be accurate coming out of this election on either way. And I think that's important to bear in mind as we approach election day here and then think about the elections next year nationally.